video. Hopefully that does not happen today. Well, in the middle of streaming, I'm going to be eating. Today, we're talking about John Dillinger, but before we get into that, sometimes when you order shit, sometimes you end up with something that you didn't order, and this is what came in my order, and I did not order this. But anyway, I'm going to drink it anyway, because anyway, they can't take it back. But for some reason, I did not order lemonade, even though I do love lemonade, but for some reason, this came in my order, and I did not order it at all. Let's see here. Now this one restaurant that I ordered from is not in every state, I don't think. But mainly for this restaurant, I go for their fries. One is called Voodoo, which is this one. I think this is the Voodoo fry. Yeah, this one is the Voodoo. You can see that right there. And then the other one is the Buffalo fry, which is more spicier. Buffalo's more like the spicy taste. Let's see here. Yep, here we go. Hold on a second. Let's move this. I'm going to see what I'm talking about in a minute here. So here, you got the Voodoo fry on the left and the Buffalo fry with the red sauce on the right. That's going to be my lunch today, along with this lemonade that I did not order. Oh, here, fork. Okay. Give me a second there. There we go. Okay. Now, let's get into it. John Dillinger. John Dillinger was a famous bank robber back in the 1920s and 30s. Now, John Dillinger was born John Herbert Dillinger on June 22nd, 1903, and he was assassinated on July 22nd, 1934. And he was an American gangster during the Great Depression. Now, he commanded a gang called the Dillinger Gang, which were all like his friends and stuff like that all robbed banks for a living. And they were accused of robbing 24 banks and 4 police stations. Dillinger was imprisoned several different times and escaped twice. And one of the prisons he escaped from was a prison that was in Indiana that was down the street from where I lived at. When I had actually lived out there like for 15 years back from 2009 to 2024 before moving back to Illinois. And he was charged with but not convicted of the murder of East Chicago police officer William O'Malley, who shot Dillinger in his bulletproof vest during a shootout, and it was the only time Dillinger was charged with any homicide. This is what John Dillinger looks like, or did look like, when he was alive at the time. That was his mugshot. Wasn't a bad looking guy, but you know, he just basically turned to a life of crime. Now, Dillinger courted publicity, like he loved being in the spotlight. Now, the media printed exaggerated accounts of his bravado and clever personality, and people described him as a Robin Hood type figure. Now, in response, J. Edgar Hoover, who was the director of the Bureau of Investigation, which would later become the Federal Bureau of Investigation, known as the FBI, he used Dillinger as a justification to involve the BOI into the Federal Bureau of Investigation, developing more sophisticated investigative techniques as weapons against organized crime. He was imprisoned from 1924 to 1933, but like I said, he would escape prison at least on 2 occasions. There was a movie made about his life called Public Enemies, which is really great. If you ever see the movie, it was in the movie John Dillinger is played by Johnny Depp. Now, after evading police in 4 different states for almost a year, Dillinger was wounded in a gunfight and went to his father's home to recover, which they tell you never to do, because that's going to be the first place that cops will look for somebody, is going to the place where their parents are or where the family is in general. Now, so like I said, he went to his father's house to recover. John Dillinger's hideout was Michigan hideout was in a place called Charlevoix, Michigan. Not sure if I said that right. He returned to Chicago in July of 1934 and sought refuge in a brothel that was owned by a lady named Anna Capanis, who later informed authorities of John Dillinger's whereabouts. On July 22nd of 1934, the local and federal law enforcement officers closed in on the Biograph Theater where John Dillinger had just finished watching a movie with his girlfriend. When BOI agents moved to arrest Dillinger as he left the theater, he attempted to flee but was fatally shot. The lethal use of force by the agents would eventually be ruled justifiable homicide. Okay, shit. So, now John Dillinger was born on June 22nd of 1903 at 2053 Cooper Street in Indianapolis, Indiana. Now, he was the younger of two children born to John Wilson Dillinger, his father, who was born in 1864 and died in 1943, and his mother, Mary Ellen Lancaster, known as Molly, who was born in 1870 and died in 1907. His paternal grandfather, Matthias Dillinger, immigrated to the U.S. in 1854 from Prussia due to poverty and fears of conscription. Now, Dillinger's parents got married on August 23rd of 1887, but his father was a grocer by trade and reportedly a harsh man. In an interview with reporters, Dillinger said that his father was firm in his discipline and believed in the adage spare the rod but spoil the kid or child, basically. His mother would pass away in 1907, just before his 4th birthday. That same year, Dillinger's older sister, Audrey, who was married a guy named Emmett Fred Hancock. In a marriage that produced 7 children. She cared for her brother for several years until their father remarried in 1912 to a lady named Lizzie Fields, born in 1878 and died in 1933, and they would have 3 kids together. That is a little bit spicy. Damn. Okay. So, now as a teenager, John Dillinger was frequently in trouble for fighting and for petty theft. He was also known for having a bewildering personality and liked to bully smaller children. They always say pick on somebody your own size, but a lot of people don't follow that logic. Or the old saying is turn the other cheek, but that doesn't always work either. He quit school to work in an Indianapolis machine shop, fearing that the city was corrupting his son. Dillinger's father relocated the family to Mooresville, Indiana in 1921. Now, despite this new life, however, Dillinger's wild and rebellious behavior was unchanged and would continue. In 1922, he was arrested for auto theft and his relationship with his father started deteriorating. In 1923, Dillinger's troubles resulted in him enlisting in the United States Navy, where he was a petty officer 3rd class. Usually they always say if you've been arrested, it would disbar you from the military, but obviously that wasn't the case here. He was a petty officer 3rd class machinery repairman assigned aboard the battleship USS Utah. He deserted when his ship was docked in Boston a few months into his service and was eventually discharged dishonorably. Now, Dillinger returned to Mooresville, where he met Beryl Ethel Hobius. The two married on April 12th of 1924. Despite Dillinger's attempts to settle down, he found it difficult. In trying to find a job. He subsequently began planning a robbery with his friend, who was an ex-convict named Ed Singleton. Dillinger and Singleton had robbed a Mooresville grocery store, stealing $50, which is equivalent to $917 in today's money. During the robbery, Dillinger struck a victim on the head with a machine bolt wrapped in a cloth and carried a gun, which, although it discharged, it didn't hit no one. While leaving the scene, the criminals were seen by a minister who recognized the two men and reported them to the police. Now, they were arrested the next day, but Singleton pleaded not guilty, but after Dillinger's father, the local Mooresville deacon, discussed the matter with Morgan County Prosecutor Omar O'Hara, his father convinced Dillinger to confess to the crime and plead guilty without retaining a defense attorney. Now, Dillinger was convicted of assault and battery with intent to rob and conspiracy to commit a felony. He expected a lenient sentence of probation as a result of his first discussion with the Herald, but instead he was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. Dillinger's father told reporters he regretted his advice and was appalled by the sentence, pleading with the judge to shorten the sentence without success. Now, en route to Mooresville, just Hesterberg and Singleton, Dillinger briefly escaped his captors but was apprehended within a few minutes. Usually, if you ever try to escape and they catch you, it would add more time onto your sentence of what you're already being served for. Now, Singleton had a change of venue and was sentenced to a jail term of 2 to 14 years. He was killed on September 2nd, 1937, when he fell asleep on railroad tracks while drunk, and he was run over by a train. Dumbass. Okay. Now, John Dillinger was incarcerated at the Indiana Reformatory and Indiana State Prison between 1924 and 1933. Now, Dillinger developed a criminal lifestyle. Upon being admitted to prison, he was quoted as saying, "I will be the meanest bastard you ever saw when I get out of here." And here's another picture of him. This is a mugshot from 1924. I'm not sure about the other one. And you zoom in here, you can see that. They usually take a left side and a front side, and usually the right side. But, you know, that's just how it is. Okay, so, now, supposedly, his physical examination at the prison showed that he had gonorrhea, treatment of which at the time was painful. He became resentful against society because of his long prison sentence and befriended other criminals, which included, seasoned bank robbers Harry Pierpont, Charles Mackley, Russell Clark, and Homer Van Meter, who taught Dillinger how to be a successful criminal. The men planned heists that they would commit soon after they were released. Dillinger also studied Herman Lamb's meticulous bank robbing system and used it extensively throughout his criminal career. Now, Dillinger's father began a public campaign to have him released and was able to obtain 188 signatures on a petition. Now, on May 10th of 1933, after serving 9.5 years, Dillinger would be paroled. Released at the depths of the Great Depression, Dillinger, with little prospect of finding employment, immediately returned to bank robbing. On June 21st of 1933, Dillinger committed his first bank robbery, stealing $10,000, which was 241. So he stole $10,000 at a bank on June 21st, 1933. Which is equivalent to $241,000 in today's money, from a bank in New Carlisle, Ohio. On August 14th, he robbed a bank in Bluffton, Ohio, trafficked by police from Dayton. He was captured and later transferred to Allen County Jail in Lima to be indicted in connection to the Bluffton robbery. After searching him before putting him into the prison, the police discovered a document which appeared to be a prison escape plan, but they demanded that Dillinger tell them what the document meant, but he refused. Now, earlier, Dillinger had helped conceive a plan to enable the escape of Pierpont, Clark, and 6 other prison acquaintances. Now, he would have friends smuggle guns into their cells, which they used to escape 4 days after Dillinger's capture. But the group that formed, known as the first Dillinger gang, consisted of Pierpont, Clark, Mackley, Ed Shells, Harry Copeland, and John Red Hamilton, a member of the Herman Lamb gang. Now, Pierpont, Clark, and Mackley arrived in Lima on October 12, 1933, when they impersonated Indiana State Police officers to break Dillinger out of prison. And they claimed that they had come to extradite Dillinger to Indiana. When the sheriff Saber asked for their credentials, Pierpont shot Saber dead, then released Dillinger from his house. Now the 4 men escaped back into Indiana, where they joined the rest of the gang. So when it came to bank robberies, Dillinger is known to have participated with the Dillinger gang in about 12 different bank robberies between June 21st of 1933 and June 30th of 1934. Now, in 1933, Evelyn Billy Frechette met Dillinger in October of 1933 and they began a courtship the following month. After Dillinger's death, Billie was offered money for her story and she wrote a memoir for the Chicago Herald-Examiner back in August of 1934. On January 25th of 1934, Dillinger and his gang were captured in Tucson, Arizona, and Dillinger was extradited to Indiana and escorted back by Matt Leach. Now, who was the chief of the Indiana State Police, he was taken to Lake County Jail in Crown Point, Indiana, and jailed for charges for the murder of police officer William O'Malley, who was killed during a Dillinger gang bank robbery in East Chicago on January 15th of 1934. And like I said, the Crown Point, Indiana jail was not that far from me when I lived in Indiana, because I walked past the jail and they do ghost tours here, and they actually have a little museum in there that you can go see. Local police posted to area newspapers that the jail was escape-proof and had posted extra guards as precaution. Now, however, on Saturday, March 3rd of 1934, Dillinger was able to escape during morning exercises with 15 other inmates, and Dillinger produced a pistol, catching deputies and guards by surprise, and was able to leave the premises without firing a shot. Almost immediately afterwards, conjecture began whether the gun Dillinger displayed was real or not. According to Deputy Ernest Blanc, Dillinger had escaped using a real pistol, but FBI files, on the other hand, indicate that Dillinger used a carved fake pistol. Sam Cahoon, a trustee whom Dillinger took hostage in the jail, also believed Dillinger had carved the gun using a razor and some shelving in his cell. In another version, according to an unpublished interview with Dillinger's attorney, Louis Paquette, investigator Art O'Leary claimed to have snuck the gun in himself. And here's some other photos of John Dillinger. Here's a picture of Billie. Here's a picture of Billie Frechette, who's the woman that John Dillinger dated. Here. Yeah. So right here's and here's another picture of down here. This is an FBI wanted poster of Here's a couple FBI wanted posters of John Dillinger. The top one, and then you got one right here where they offered money for him if you captured him, or knew about his whereabouts. So, on March 16th of 1934, or actually, I think it would have been 1934, yeah. 16th of 1934, Herbert Youngblood, who escaped from Crown Point alongside Dillinger, was shot dead by police in Port Huron, Michigan. Now, Deputy Sheriff Charles Cabana was mortally wounded in the gunfight, and he would later die from his injuries. Now, before his death, Youngblood told officers Dillinger was in Port Huron, and officers immediately began a fruitless search for the escaped man. An Indiana newspaper reported that Youngblood later retraced the story and said that he retracted the story and said he did not know where Dillinger was at that time, as he had parted with him soon after their escape. Now, Dillinger was indicted by a grand jury and the Bureau of Investigation, a precursor of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and they organized a nationwide manhunt for him. Just hours after his escape from Lake County Jail, Dillinger reunited with his girlfriend, Billie Frechette. Now, according to Frechette's trial testimony, Dillinger stayed with her for almost 2 weeks, but however, the two had actually traveled to the Twin Cities and taken lodgings at the Santa Monica apartment in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where they stayed for 2 weeks. Dillinger then met Hamilton, and the two mustered a new gang consisting of Babyface Nelson's gang, which included Babyface Nelson himself, Homer Van Meter, Tommy Carroll, and Eddie Green. Now, 3 days after Dillinger's escape from Crown Point, the second gang robbed a bank in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. A week later, they robbed First National Bank in Mason City, Iowa. Okay, so here you have a clipping, newspaper clippings of okay, at the top right here is newspaper clippings of the capture of John Dillinger and his gang in the old lobby of the Hotel Congress, and you can see that right here. Like zooming in, then backing out here, and then down here, down here was the house that John Dillinger lived in when he was in Tucson, Arizona. God damn it. Let's go back down there. Yeah, so right here. Okay, so that's that. So on Tuesday, March 20th, 1934, Dillinger and Frechette relocated to the Lincoln Court apartment in St. Paul, Minnesota, using aliases as using the aliases Mr. and Mrs. Carl T. Hellman in apartment 303. Daisy Colby, the landlord, testified at Frechette's trial that she spent most evenings during Dillinger's stay observing what was happening. On March 30th, Colby went to the FBI St. Paul field office to file reports, including information about the couple's new Hudson sedan that was parked in the garage behind the apartments. People wanted to know how they got that. So, of course, you know how that is. So as a result of Colby's tip, let's go down here, hold on. Okay, so as a result of Colby's tip, the building was surveilled by two agents, Rufus Coulter and Rusty Knowles, but they saw nothing unusual because the blinds were drawn, so they couldn't see inside anyway, even if they wanted to. So the next morning at approximately 10:15 a.m., Knowles circled around the block looking for the Hudson, but observed nothing. He parked first on Lincoln Avenue, the north side of the apartments, then on the west side of Lexington Avenue, and at the northwest corner of Lexington. In Lincoln, and remained in his car while watching Coulter and St. Paul police detective Henry Cummings pull up, park, and enter the building. 10 minutes later, by Knowles' estimate, Van Meter parked a green Ford coupe on the north side of the apartment building. Yeah, so hold on here. Now, meanwhile, Coulter and Cummings knocked on the door of apartment 303. Frechette answered, opening the door only 2 to 3 inches. She said she was not dressed to come back. Coulter told her that they would wait. After waiting 2 to 3 minutes, Coulter went to the basement apartment of the caretakers, Louis and Margaret Meadlinger, and asked to use the telephone to call the bureau. Now, he quickly returned to Cummings, and the two of them waited for Frechette to open the door. Van Meter then appeared in the hall and asked Coulter if his name was Johnson. Coulter said it was not, and as Van Meter passed onto the landing of the third floor, Coulter asked for a name. Van Meter replied, "I am a soap salesman," which he wasn't. But and asked where his samples were. Van Meter said they were in his car. Coulter asked if he had any credentials. Van Meter said no and continued down the stairs. Coulter waited 10 to 20 seconds, then followed Van Meter. As Coulter reached the lobby on the ground floor, Van Meter began shooting at him, and Coulter hastily fled outside, chased by Van Meter. Van Meter ran back into the front entrance. Recognizing Van Meter, Knowles pointed out the Ford to Coulter and told him to disable it. Coulter shot out the rear left tire. While Coulter stayed with Van Meter's Ford, Knowles went to the corner drugstore and telephoned the local police, then the bureau's St. Paul office, but he could not get through because the lines were busy. Van Meter, meanwhile, escaped by hopping on a passing coal truck. Now, Frechette and her harboring trial testimony said that she told Dillinger that the police had shown up after speaking to Cummings. Upon hearing Van Meter firing at Coulter, Dillinger began shooting through the door with a Thompson submachine gun, sending Cummings scrambling for cover. Dillinger then stepped out and fired another burst at Cummings, and Cummings shot back with a revolver but quickly ran out of ammunition. He hit Dillinger in the left cap of one of his 5 shots, but he then hastily retreated down the stairs to the front entrance. And once Cummings retreated, Dillinger and Frechette hurried down the stairs, exited through the door, and drove away in the Hudson. Now, after the shootout, Dillinger and Frechette drove to Eddie Green's apartment in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Green telephoned his associate, Dr. Clayton E. May, at his office at 712 Masonic Temple in downtown Minneapolis, which is still extant. With Green, his wife Beth, and Frechette following in Green's car, the doctor drove Dillinger to an apartment belonging to Augusta Salt, who had been providing nursing services and a bed for May's illicit patients, whom he could not risk seeing at his regular office for several years. Basically, a lot of the people he associated with were criminals. Um, now, now Clayton May treated Dillinger's wounds with antiseptics, but Green visited Dillinger on May on 2nd, hours before Green was mortally wounded by the barrel in St. Paul. Dillinger convalesced at Mays until Wednesday, April 4th, and May was promised 500 for his services, but received nothing, according to what we hear. After the events in Minneapolis Minneapolis, Minnesota, Dillinger and Frechette traveled to Mooresville to visit Dillinger's father on Friday, April 6th of 1934, and it was spent contacting family members, particularly his half-brother Hubert. On April 6th, Hubert and Dillinger left Mooresville at about 8 p.m. and proceeded to Ohio, approximately 210 miles away from where they were at, to see Joseph and Lena Pierpont, who were parents of the Prohibition-era gangster Harry Pierpont. The Pierponts were not home, so the two headed back to Mooresville around midnight. On April 7th at approximately 3:30 a.m., they rammed a car driven by Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Manning near Noblesville, Indiana, after Hubert fell asleep behind the wheel. Now they crashed through a farm fence and about 200 feet into the woods, and both men made it back to the Mooresville farm, but swarms of police showed up at the accident scene within hours, and found in the car were maps, a machine gun magazine, a length of rope, and a bullwhip. I guess they were going all out. Now, according to Hubert, his brother planned to pay a visit with the bullwhip to his former one-armed shyster lawyer at Crown Point, Indiana, Joseph Ryan, who had run off with his retainer fee after being replaced by Louis Piquet. At about 10:30 a.m. on April 7th, Billy, Hubert and Hubert's wife purchased a black four-door Ford V8, registering it within the name of Mrs. Fred Penfield, Billy Frechette. At 2:30 p.m., Billy and Hubert picked up the V8 and returned to Mooresville. So we go down here. Okay, on Sunday, on Sunday, April 8th, the Dillingers enjoyed a family picnic while the FBI had the farm under surveillance nearby. Later in the afternoon, suspecting that they were being watched, agents J.L. Garrity and T.J. Donegan were cruising in the vicinity in their car. The group left in separate cars. Billy drove the new Ford V8 with two of Dillinger's nieces, Mary Hancock in the front seat and Alberta Hancock in the back, and Dillinger was on the floor of the car. He was later seen but not recognized by Donegan and Garrity. Eventually, Norman, driving the V8, proceeded with Dillinger and Billy to Chicago, where they separated from Norman eventually. The next afternoon, Monday, April 9th, Dillinger had an appointment at a tavern at 416 North State Street. And sensing trouble, Billy went in first. She was promptly arrested by agents, but refused to reveal where Dillinger was. Dillinger was waiting in the car outside the tavern and then drove it off unnoticed. The two never saw each other again. Now, Dillinger abruptly became despondent after Billy was arrested. The other gang members tried to talk him out of rescuing her, but Van Meter encouraged him by saying that he knew where they could find bulletproof vests. That Friday morning and late at night, Dillinger and Van Meter took a hostage Warsaw, Indiana police officer Judd Pittinger. They marched Pittinger at gunpoint into the police station, where they stole several more guns and bulletproof vests. After separating, Dillinger picked up Hamilton, who was recovering from the Mason City robbery, and the two then traveled to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where they visited Hamilton's sisters, Anna Steve. The Bureau received a telephone call Sunday morning, April 22nd, that John Dillinger and several of his Confederates were hiding at a small vacation lodge called Little Bohemia, which was near present-day Manitowish waters, Wisconsin. Dillinger and some of the gang were upstairs in the lodge and began shooting out the windows while the Bureau of Investigation agents ducked for cover. Dillinger and his men fled from the back of the building. By 1934, in July, Dillinger had absconded, and the federal agents did not have any information about his whereabouts. He had in fact gone to Chicago, where he used the alias Jimmy Lawrence, a petty criminal from Wisconsin who bore a close resemblance of look to Dillinger. Working as a clerk, Dillinger found that in a large metropolis like Chicago, he was able to live an anonymous existence for a little bit. But what he did not realize that the federal agents Dragnet happened to be based in Chicago. When the authorities found Dillinger's blood-spattered getaway car on a Chicago side street, they were positive that he was in the city. According to Arthur Lurie, as early as March 1934, Dillinger expressed an interest in plastic surgery, and he had asked O'Leary to check with Paquette on such matters. At the end of April, Paquette paid a visit to his old friend, Dr. Willem Loser. Loser had practiced in Chicago for over 27 years before being convicted under the Harrison-Narcotic Act in 1931. He was sentenced to 3 years at Leavenworth, but was paroled early on December 7th of 1932 with Paquette's help. He later testified that he performed facial surgery on himself and elaborated the fingerprint impressions on the tips of his fingers by the application of a caustic soda preparation. Paquette said that Dillinger would have to pay $5,000 for the plastic surgery, $4,400 split between Paquette, Loser, and O'Leary, and $600 to Dr. Harold Cassidy, who would administer the anesthetic. Now, the procedure would be done at home of the Paquette's longtime friend, 67-year-old James Probosco, at the end of May. So basically, on May 28th, Loser was picked up at his home at 7:30 p.m. by O'Leary and Cassidy. The three of them then drove to Probosco's palace, that place, and Dillinger chose to have general anesthetic. And Loser later testified, I asked him what, and he wanted two moles removed on the right lower forehead between the eyes and one on the left angle. Yesterday was Thanksgiving. I did not work, but I am working tomorrow and Sunday to make up some extra money. Today I went into work. I got off at about 9 o'clock. I worked 5.5 hours today of double time pay, or actually triple time, because I got holiday pay on top of double pay. So that was kind of considered a triple pay for that. So we go back to that. So basically, Dillinger said he wanted two warts removed on the which are kind of like moles removed on the right lower forehead between the eyes, and one at the left outer angle of the left eye, and wanted a depression of the nose filled in, a large one, two on the left of the median line of the upper lip exercise, and wanted his dimples removed and wanted the angle of his mouth drawn up. He didn't say anything about the fingers that day. Cassidy administered an overdose of ether. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but which caused Dillinger to suffocate. He began to turn blue and stopped breathing. Loser pulled Dillinger's tongue out of his mouth with a pair of forceps at the same time and forced both elbows into his ribs. Dillinger gasped and resumed breathing. The procedure continued with only a local anesthetic, but Loser had removed several moles on Dillinger's forehead, made an incision in his nose and an incision in his chin, and tied back both cheeks. Now, Loser met with Paquette again on Saturday, June 2nd, with Paquette saying that more work was needed on Dillinger, and that Van Meter now wanted the same work done to him so that they could disguise themselves. That doesn't always work that way either. Also, both now wanted work done on both fingertips. The price for the fingerprint procedure would be $500 per hand, or $100 a finger. Loser used a mixture of nitric and hydrochloric acid, known commonly as aqua regia. I don't know if they still make that. Okay. So Loser met with O'Leary the next night at Clark and Wright at 8:30 p.m. and they once again drove to Probasco's. Present that evening were Dillinger, Van Meter, Probasco, Paquette Cassidy, and Peggy Doyle, Probasco's girlfriend. Loser testified that he worked for only about 30 minutes before O'Leary and Paquette left. And Loser would testify, Cassidy and I worked on Dillinger and Van Meter simultaneously on June 3rd. While the work was being done, Dillinger and Van Meter changed off. The work that could be done while the patient was sitting up, that patient was in the sitting room. The work that had to be done while the man was lying down, that patient was on the couch in the bedroom. And they were changing back and forth according to the work to be done. The hands were sterilized, made aseptic with antiseptics, thoroughly washed with soap and water, and used sterile gauze afterwards to clean themselves up. Next, the cutting instrument knife was used to expose the lower skin. In other words, take off the epidermis and expose the derma. Then alternately, the acid and the alkaloid was applied as was necessary to produce the desired results. Back then, they didn't have a lot of the anesthetic like we have today. Minor work was done 2 days later, Tuesday, June 5th. Loser made some small corrections, first on Van Meter, then Dillinger. And Loser stated, a man came in before I left, who I found out later was Babyface Nelson. He came in with the drum of a machine gun bullets under his arm, then threw them on the bed or the couch in the bedroom. And then started to talk to Van Meter, and the two then motioned for Dillinger to come over, and the three went back into the kitchen. Peggy Doyle later told agents Dillinger and Van Meter resided at Probasco's home until the last week of June of 1934, and that on some occasions they would be away for a day or two, sometimes leaving separately, and on other occasions together. That at this time, Van Meter usually parked his car in the rear of Probasco's residence outside the back fence. That she gathered that Dillinger was keeping company with a young woman who lived on the north side of Chicago, as much as he would state upon leaving Probasco's home, and that he was going in the direction of Diversity Boulevard. That Van Meter apparently was not acquainted with Dillinger's friend, and she heard him warning Dillinger to be careful about striking up acquaintances with girls he knew nothing about. And that Dillinger and Van Meter usually kept the machine gun at an open case under the piano in the parlor, and that they also kept the shotgun under the parlor table. O'Leary stated that Dillinger expressed dissatisfaction with the facial work that Loser had performed on him. O'Leary said that on another occasion that Probasco told him that the son of a bitch has gone out for one of his walks, and that he did not know when he would return. That Probasco raved about the craziness of Dillinger, stating that he was always going for walks and was likely to call the authorities to locate the place where he was staying, and that Probasco stated frankly on the occasion that he was afraid to have the man around. Agents arrested Loser at 1127 South Harvey in Oak Park, Illinois. And on Tuesday, July 24th, O'Leary returned from a family fishing trip on July 24th, and the day of Loser's arrest, he had read the newspapers that the Department of Justice was looking for 2 doctors and another man in connection, and some plastic surgery that had been done on Dillinger. O'Leary had left Chicago immediately, but returned 2 weeks later and learned that Loser and others had been arrested, telephoned Paquette, who assured him everything was all right, and then left again. He returned from St. Louis on August 25th and was promptly taken into custody. On Friday, July 27th, Probasco fell to his death from a 19th floor of the Bankers Building in Chicago while in custody. On Thursday, August 23rd, Van Meter was shot and killed in a dead-end alley in St. Paul by Tom Brown, who was a former St. Paul police chief, and then the current chief Frank Colin. Polly Hamilton was a teenage runaway from Fargo, North Dakota, and she met Anna Campanis, also known as Anna Sage, or the Woman in Red, in Gary, Indiana, and worked periodically as a prostitute in Anna's brothel until marrying Gary police officer Roy O'Keel in 1929, and they would end up divorcing in 1933. In the summer of 1934, the now 26-year-old Hamilton was a waitress in Chicago at the S&S sandwich shop located at 1209 Wilson Avenue. She had remained friends with Sage and was sharing living space with Sage and Sage's 24-year-old son, Steve, at 2858 Clark Street. Dillinger and Hamilton, a Billy Frechette lookalike, met in June of 1934 at the Barrel of Fun nightclub located at 4541 Wilson Avenue. Dillinger introduced himself as Jimmy Lawrence and said that he was a clerk at the Board of Trade. They dated until Dillinger's death at the Biograph Theater in July of 1934. Division of Investigations Chief J. Edgar Hoover created a special task force headquartered in Chicago to locate Dillinger. On July 21st, Anna Campinas contacted the FBI, offering agents information on Dillinger in exchange for their help in preventing her deportation to Romania due to Campinas' status as an alien of low moral character. The FBI would agree to her terms, but she was later deported nonetheless. Campinas revealed that Dillinger was spending time with another prostitute, Polly Hamilton, and that she and the couple were going to see a movie together the next day. She agreed to wear an orange dress so police could easily identify her. She was unsure which of two theaters they would attend, the Biograph or the Marlboro. On December 15th of 1934, pardons were issued by Indiana Governor Harry G. Leslie for the offenses of which Anna Campinas was convicted. Campinas stated that on Sunday afternoon, July 22nd, Dillinger asked her whether she wanted to go to the show with them, Polly and him. She asked him what show was he going to see, and he said he would like to see the theater around the corner, meaning the Biograph Theater. She stated she was unable to leave the house to inform Purvis or Martin about Dillinger's plans to attend the Biograph, but as they were going to have fried chicken for the evening meal, she told Polly that she had nothing in which to fry the chicken and was going to the store to get some butter. That while at the store, she called Mr. Purvis and informed him of Dillinger's plans to attend the Biograph that evening, at the same time obtaining the butter. She then returned to the house so Polly would not be suspicious that she went out to call anyone. And here's the picture of the Biograph Theater. I don't think that's even still open anymore. But this is the Biograph Theater where John Dillinger was killed outside of. Actually, let me see that again. Yep, right there. I love some of these black and white photos. So a team of federal agents and officers from the police forces from outside of Chicago were informed, along with a very small number of Chicago police officers. Among them was East Chicago Police Department Sergeant Martin Zarkovich, the officer to whom Campinas had acted as a criminal informant. And at the time, federal officials felt that the Chicago Police Department was thoroughly corrupt and that they could not be trusted. That's just a matter of opinion for some people. Now Hoover and Purvis also wanted more of the credit. Not wanting to take the risk of another embarrassing escape of Dillinger, the police were divided into two groups. On Sunday, one team was sent to the Marlboro Theater on the city's west side, while another team surrounded the Biograph Theater at 2433 North Lincoln Avenue on the north side. So at approximately 8:30 p.m., Sage, Hamilton, and Dillinger were observed entering the Biograph Theater, which was showing the crime drama Manhattan Melodrama, featuring Clark Gable, Myrna Loy, and William Powell. Now, during the stakeout, the Biograph's manager thought the agents were criminals preparing for a robbery. He called the Chicago police, who responded, but then had to be waved off by the federal agents who told him that they were on the stakeout for an important target. Now, here is a picture of the Biograph Theater just 6 after Dillinger. Sorry about that for a second. Okay, so when the movie Manhattan Melodrama ended, Purvis stood by the front door and signaled Dillinger's exit by lighting a cigar. Now, Murphy and the other agents reported that Dillinger head and looked directly at the agent as he walked by, glanced straight, then moved ahead of his female companions, reached into his pocket but failed to extract his Colt M1903, and ran into a nearby alley. Now, other accounts stated Dillinger ignored a command to surrender, whipped out his gun, and then headed for the alley. Agents already had the alley closed off anyway, so he couldn't go that way. Now, three men would pursue Dillinger into the alley and fire. Clarence Hurt shot twice, Charles Winston shot 3 times, and Herman Hollis once. Dillinger was hit from behind and fell face to the ground. Now here's a death mask of John Dillinger, made from an original mold, and one of only 4 made. This one, the second, is on display at the Alcatraz East Museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. And note the bullet exit mark hitting his eye. They hit the eye. This is John Dillinger's grave site. This is John Dillinger's grave at Crown Hill Cemetery in Indianapolis, Indiana. At least the 4th marker due to be replaced since 1934, due to souvenir seekers chipping away at them. It's actually against the law to desecrate a grave, even though people have tried that so many times. Now, Dillinger was struck 4 times with 2 bullets grazing him and one causing a superficial wound to the right side. The fatal bullet entered through the back of his neck, severed the spinal cord, and passed into his brain and exited just right under the eye, which was an easy kill shot. So it severed 2 sets of veins and arteries. An ambulance was summoned, although it was soon apparent that Dillinger had died from the gunshot wounds. He was officially pronounced dead at Alexian Brothers Hospital. Now, according to the investigators, Dillinger died without saying a word. Winston was later thought to have fired the shots, and as a consequence, he received a personal letter of commendation from J. Edgar Hoover. Now, the two female bystanders, Teresa Paulus and Etta Natolsky, were wounded in the shooting. Dillinger bumped into Natolsky just as the shooting started. Natolsky was shot and was taken to Columbus Hospital. Dillinger was shot and killed by the special agent on July 22nd of 1934, and at approximately 10:40 p.m., according to a New York Times report the next day. Dillinger's death came only 2 months after the deaths of fellow notorious criminals Bonnie and Clyde, which would be another good video to do on them. And there were reports of people dipping their handkerchiefs and skirts into the pool of blood that had formed. As Dillinger lay in the alley as keepsakes, souvenir hunters madly dipped newspapers in the blood that stained the pavement. Handkerchiefs were whipped out and used to mop up the blood. Now Dillinger's body was available for public display at the Cook County morgue. Supposedly, an estimated 15,000 people came to view the body over a day and a half. As many as 4 death masks were also made. Dillinger is buried at Crown Hill Cemetery in Indianapolis, Indiana. Dillinger's gravestones have been replaced several times because of vandalism by people chipping off pieces of souvenirs. Now, Hilton Crouch, who was born in 1903 and died in 1976, is an associate of Dillinger on some early heists, and he's only buried a few yards west to John Dillinger's grave. So there's been so many movies made about John Dillinger. Let's see here. They even made poems about it. So In 1935, MGM had a movie called Public Herald #1, and it incorporates fictionalized details from Dillinger's narrative, including the gun battle at the Wisconsin Roadhouse and the killing of the fugitive gangster Joseph Kalia as he leaves the theater. In 1941, Humphrey Bogart played a Dillinger-like role in High Sierra, a movie that was based loosely on research into Dillinger's life by W.R. Burnett. In 1945, Lawrence Tierney played the title role in the first movie dramatization of Dillinger's career called Dillinger. In 1957, director Don Siegel's movie Babyface Nelson featured Mickey Rooney as Nelson and Leo Gordon as Dillinger. In 1965, a movie called Young Dillinger was released where Nick Adams played John Dillinger and Robert Conrad played Pretty Boy Floyd. In 1969, director Marco Ferran's movie Dillinger is Dead includes documentary footage of the real Dillinger as well as newspaper clippings. In 1971, Appointment with Destiny, The Last Days of John Dillinger, which was narrated by Rod Serling, which was 52 minutes long, shot in newsreel style, and very accurate for its time. The late Joseph Pinkston served as a technical advisor. Pinkston himself makes an uncredited cameo in the biograph sequence playing an agent. In 1973, a movie called Dillinger was directed and written by John Milius with Warren Oates in the title role, and it presents the gang sympathetically in keeping with the anti-hero theme play in popular movies after Bonnie and Clyde in 1967. In 1979, Louis Teague directed the movie Lady in Red, featuring Pamela Sue Martin as the eponymous lady in the red dress. However, in this movie, it's Dillinger's girlfriend Polly in red, and not the Romanian informant Anna Sage, Louise Fletcher. Sage tricks Polly into wearing red dress so that FBI agents can identify Dillinger, Robert Conrad, as he emerges from the cinema. In 1991, a TV movie called Dillinger, where Mark Harmon plays Dillinger. In 1995, Roger Corman produced the fictional movie Dillinger and Capone. I don't know if they knew each other, but they probably did if they were criminals. Featuring Martin Sheen as Dillinger and F. Mary Abraham as Al Capone. Dillinger survives the theater stakeout when the FBI mistakenly guns down his brother, blackmailed by Capone into retrieving $15 million from a secret vault. In Chosen 4, Tear Gas and Tommy Guns, Dillinger robs the First National Bank DVD, Mason City Public Library, 38 minutes. That was a documentary regarding the bank robbery, included contemporary interviews with still living witnesses. Also contains the H.C. Kunkelman movie in its entirety. In 2009, okay, hold on. In 2009, director Michael Mann's movie Public Enemies is an adaptation of Brian Burrell's book Public Enemies, America's Greatest Crime Wave and the Birth of the FBI from 1933 to 1934. The movie features Johnny Depp as John Dillinger, Marion Cotillard as Billy Frechette, and Christian Bale as the FBI agent Melvin Purvis. Although the movie has accurate portrayals of several major moments in Dillinger's life, such as his death and dialogue at his arraignment hearing, it's inaccurate in some major historical details, such as the timeline and location of deaths of major criminals, which included Pretty Boy Floyd, Babyface Nelson, and Homer Van Meter. In 2012, British actor Alexander Ellis portrayed Dillinger in the first dollar baby screen adaptation of Stephen King's short story The Death of Jack Hamilton. The experimental metalcore musical band The Dillinger Escape Plan is named after Dillinger. Now, Woody Allen's character's failed prison escape in the movie Take the Money and Run is a parody of Dillinger's 1934 escape. In the 1934 film, or actually in the movie High Fidelity, the main character Rob references the shooting at the Biograph movie theater, but gets several details wrong, including who tipped off the agents. Now the song Revere by Protest to Hero Palimpsest in 2020 depicts Dillinger's hardening into the meanest bastard you've ever seen during incarceration. Now down here we do have a two list. The list of the Great Depression era outlaws and the Dillinger dossier. Let's see what the Dillinger dossier is for a minute. Okay, that's not really long, but okay, it's a book that was written by J. Robert Nash. Okay. Oh, that's not what I was looking for, but hold on. Then you got the era. You got the era of the Great Depression outlaws. And because of John Dillinger robbing banks, he was listed as public enemy number one. Okay, so that's about all for today. If you like the video on John Dillinger, you can leave a like and you can leave a like and subscribe to the channel, Rusty the King. Make sure that I didn't get my roommate Michael on this. He's been very busy. He was on the last one. He will be on some other videos later on. It's just a matter of when he decides to come up. But he's been looking for his for something. So anyway, but give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, Rusty the King. Make sure that maybe you can also leave comments on the videos after this is posted and let me know what you guys think. I'm also willing to take suggestions. Let me know what videos you guys want me to do, and I'll get to them as soon as possible. But somebody did ask me the other day, was I gonna post? And I said yes, I do, but I don't. They asked me, was it on Wednesday? I'm sorry, Steven, you're not my type because I'm not gay. So anyway. I don't post on the holidays because I just don't. So I didn't post yesterday. Yesterday was Thanksgiving. I don't know how you guys' Thanksgiving went. I didn't have to work Thanksgiving because my job was closed that day. But I went in today and it was Black Friday and I got paid extra for coming in on Black Friday. Next month will be Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and New Year's Eve. And I'm gonna have those days off from work to try to work out a schedule there. So I didn't really eat anything yesterday because, for one, I live with roommates, so they don't cook. They don't cook turkey or anything like that, which is a tradition for Thanksgiving. We didn't buy turkey. We didn't eat any turkey. We didn't have any mashed potatoes, anything like that. It's just whatever we had that we had ordered from the store. Now, for me, if I had to pick a movie that I felt was good, that was based on John Dillinger, it would be the Johnny Depp movie Public Enemies. Even though it was good in some parts, but they have to but in order to do these movies, they got to be accurate. It's like a lot of times they over exaggerate shit in the movies. Okay, I think I got an idea of what my next video will be for next week. Prohibition in the United States. That would be a good one to talk about. Because this also centers on a lot of crime. Yeah, even for Christmas, even though I don't celebrate Christmas because, for one, I am Jewish, so you're not going to see a lot of that. And especially Jewish people are not allowed to eat pork at all. But I do got my French fries here. God damn it, fucker. Okay. I have to throw that one out and throw this out. Ugh, fuck. Now I've had this happen a few times, but not like this. I ordered Wingstop today, which is French fries, and I got this by mistake. Triple A lemonade, and I did not order lemonade from Wingstop, but obviously it came with my order, which I don't know why, but I'm not going to complain. And then I got voodoo fries and buffalo fries for my lunch. Usually I don't work Saturday or Sunday at my job, but I'm going to go in tomorrow and Sunday to make some extra money. So today, I made triple time because I got paid holiday pay on top of double time, which made it triple time. Tomorrow will be time and a half, and Sunday will be double time. Supposedly, I think. I don't know for sure. I gotta make sure. Last year was double time, but you know, my job has been trying to make changes on everything. So, we got that. So, I'm gonna go so I can get some stuff done. But if you like the video, like I said, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, Rusty the King. Let me know what videos you guys want me to put out, and I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. And you can also, like I said, leave comments, subscribe to the channel, donate to the Patreon link, which I have connected to this, which will help fund the channel even further. And I'll see you guys next week, which I'm not sure exactly what days next week. Might be Friday again of next week. I'm not sure, but I'll let you guys know.